A grim discovery at a scenic site. 3 bodies found in the area where 2 Australians and 1 American were reported missing after their sons went missing during a surf holiday with their American friend Jack Carter Road. Mexican authorities say they were killed execution style, all 3 shot in the head.
It's April 27th, 2024. 2 brothers, Jake and Callum Robinson, and their friend, Jack Carter Road, were on vacation in Baja California, Mexico, when they were approached by a group who wanted to steal their truck's tires. Who could have known this would end in a nationwide search for tourists that ended in tragedy? Here are 6 times tourists messed with the wrong cartels.
Mexican government officials say a man was killed in a beach town in Oaxaca. Local media reports say he was found with a bullet wound in a car.
May 14th, 2023, Victor Masson, a 27-year-old from Quebec, Canada, arrived in Puerto Escondido, Mexico, with his Mexican girlfriend. However, less than 24 hours later, he's dead. What started as a night out ended in a fatal clash after what seemed like a minor argument at a bar, turning into a deadly encounter. This would go down at the El Adoquin district of Puerto Escondido, a coastal town on Mexico's Pacific shore. Now that evening, at a local bar, Masson socialized with 4 individuals, 2 men and 2 women. Investigators later identified one of them as Mario Omada Sanguinez Lopez. However, when it came time to settle a bill, a dispute broke out between Masson and the group. Now, Masson didn't know these guys were linked to the cartel. And while specifics of that exchange remain unclear, what's known is that Masson left that bar, contacted authorities to report he'd been robbed, and later sent a voice message to his girlfriend warning her that he felt in danger.
I have no idea what's happening. If I text you the word danger, locate my location and call the cops.
His fears turned out to be true. In the early morning hours of May 15th at around 1:45 a.m., Masson drove his gray vehicle along Emiliano Zapata Street in a neighborhood far from the typical tourist routes. According to eyewitnesses, a motorcycle carrying Sanguinez Lopez and 2 women was already parked near this apartment. And as Masson arrived, he accidentally struck the motorcycle. A heated argument followed once again. Reports later show that Sanguinez Lopez threw a rock at Masson's car before pulling out a gun and firing twice through the driver's window. Masson died almost immediately. The attacker then moved his body into the passenger seat and drove off. The car was later found abandoned in the Arroyo Seco neighborhood. Authorities confirmed that this location was not where the actual shooting took place. But shortly after, local police located Masson's lifeless body inside the bullet-ridden vehicle. May 22, 2023. A Mexican citizen, Sergio Ruiz Luengas, approached the police. He gave a full statement naming Sanguinez Lopez as the shooter and describing the attack in detail. He admitted that the killer had approached him at gunpoint shortly after the shooting, warning him not to say anything or he'd be killed. Despite fearing for his life, Ruiz Luengas gave his deposition to investigators. However, just days later, he too was murdered. While authorities wouldn't confirm whether his killing was connected to his testimony, the timing raised suspicions. May 25, 2023. An arrest warrant was issued for Sanguinez Lopez. He's taken into custody the next day, formally charged with homicide. Despite the arrests, Masson's family in Canada struggled with getting justice, expressing deep frustration at the lack of diplomatic support. Now, first, they weren't informed about the witness's murder until 2 months later. And then, the lawyer who'd been representing the family in Mexico resigned from the case, citing fears for personal safety. The family was left scrambling to find new legal representation in a country where they didn't really speak the language fluently. The Canadian government also offered little assistance. However, despite the death of the key witness, the prosecutor's office said the case would proceed. Mexican law permits previously recorded witness statements to be submitted as evidence, even if the witness cannot appear in court. Nevertheless, though, the defense still has the right to challenge that, arguing that the inability to cross-examine the witness could affect the fairness of the trial. By September 2023, authorities were preparing to present full evidence against Sanguinez Lopez. As of now, Masson's family continues to follow the case closely from Canada, again seeking justice in a country where navigating the criminal system has proven both dangerous and emotionally draining.
It's a tourist hotspot known for its all-inclusive white sand beach resorts, but it's also recently been plagued by brazen acts of violence, and the latest incident has left 2 Canadians dead.
This unverified video purports to show the chaos after the shooting at Hotel Xcaret that left 2 Canadians dead and 1 wounded.
January 2022, 2 Canadian tourists were shot at close range inside a luxury resort in Playa del Carmen. Now, at first, it looks like random violence. Within hours, though, investigators uncovered ties to something far more disturbing. January 21st, 2022, 2 Canadian men had traveled to Mexico as part of a group of 10 tourists. The men, both 34 years old and with known criminal records in Canada for offenses related to drug and weapons trafficking, were staying at the 5-star Hotel Xcaret, just south of Cancun. The victims reportedly owed money to international criminal groups and had attracted the attention of those determined to settle that debt. Now, the group of attackers followed these 2 men for several days before striking. Surveillance footage and witness accounts would help authorities with the investigation. The attackers had infiltrated the resort by posing as tourists and wearing guest wristbands. Hotel security systems initially prevented the hired killer from completing the hit. And because of his failure, a second assassin was flown in specifically to finish the job. It was clear this is a cartel-level operation. So on the day of the attack, video shows one of the suspects, a woman named Nu T, entering the hotel. She wasn't recognized as a guest, but acted like one and communicated with the primary suspect minutes before the killings. Authorities believe she played a key role in providing the shooters with the victims' locations inside the resort. As the Canadians relaxed in the hotel with the rest of their group, the assassin approached. Without warning, he opens fire inside the hotel grounds.
5 bangs believed to be gunshots ring out.
One of the men died on the spot. The other fatally wounded and died shortly after. A third person, a woman who was in a relationship with one of the victims, was caught in the crossfire and hospitalized with serious injuries. Immediately after the shooting, the attackers fled the scene. Local police began a manhunt. Authorities later arrested 2 suspects, Christian R., identified as a pro-hitman from Mexico City, and Nu T., accused of coordinating with the gunman and passing on information. Investigators are still searching for the others involved and trying to confirm who financed and organized this murder. The hotel, known for its sprawling grounds and luxurious layout, was not expecting such an internal threat. And as a result, the gunman, who's now at large, exploited the guest system to blend in and strike without drawing attention until it was too late. As the legal process continues, local officials are working on identifying and arresting all individuals involved in the crime. Now, they've emphasized that they're working closely with federal law enforcement and international partners, while Quintana Roo Prosecutor's Office hasn't yet disclosed full sentencing information. The arrested suspects face charges linked to murder and organized criminal activity.
Special Agent Jaime Zapata of Brownsville, Texas, was shot several times in the chest and killed.
Is this a sign that Americans are being targeted just as tourists travel there for spring break?
February 2011. Jaime Jorge Zapata was posted to Mexico on an assignment thanks to his impressive success in combating drug cartels. However, he didn't know that this would also bring him something he never wanted. Born May 7, 1978, Brownsville, Texas, a city bordering Mexico, Jaime was one of 5 brothers, all of whom pursued careers in criminal justice. After earning a degree in criminal justice, Zapata began his career in U.S. Customs and Border Protection on February 6, 2006. He became a border agent in Yuma, Arizona, and served on the Human Smuggling and Trafficking Unit, and later with the Border Enforcement Security Task Force. But during this time, Zapata gained recognition for his work in disrupting criminal networks operating across the U.S.-Mexican border. However, his success was noticed by the cartel, and they wouldn't ignore it. In early 2011, Zapata was assigned to Mexico as part of a mission to assist in investigations that targeted the smuggling of drugs and weapons into the U.S. Though officially deployed on duty, Zapata's temporary presence in Mexico placed him in a position not unlike that of a tourist, operating outside his home country and without full protections under U.S. law. February 15, 2011. Zapata and fellow ICE Special Agent Victor Avila are driving on assignment from Laredo, Texas to Mexico City. And as they're traveling along Highway 57 in San Luis Potosi, they notice two SUVs speeding behind them. The vehicles, now approaching aggressively, raised immediate concern. Suddenly, one of the SUVs overtook the agent's vehicle while gunmen in the second opened fire. The agents are driving an armored Chevy Suburban with diplomatic plates, which makes them stand out. Avila rolled down his window and attempted to identify themselves as U.S. diplomats, but one of the attackers jumped out with a rifle, forced open the car door, and began shooting him at close range. Zapata quickly shifted the vehicle into park, which automatically locked the doors, briefly preventing the assailants from dragging him out. Badly outnumbered, the agents cracked their windows, hoping to reason with the attackers. They repeated that they were American diplomats, but again, ignored. The cartel members fired almost 100 rounds into this vehicle, with rifles and handguns, showing no hesitation. Zapata was hit 3 times. Though severely wounded, he managed to put that car into gear and drive away before collapsing. Avila, shot twice in the leg, used his phone to call for help. A Mexican helicopter arrived shortly after. Zapata, however, dies from his injuries before medical assistance could be given. Turns out the attackers were members of Los Zetas, and federal investigators later confirmed that the gunmen had set up a fake military checkpoint, dressed in camouflage and carrying machine guns. The gunmen claimed that they'd mistaken the agents for rival cartel members, but testimony from Agent Avila and the presence of diplomatic plates indicated that the attackers kind of knew they were targeting U.S. officials. During the investigation, though, authorities arrested several cartel members, including Jesus Enrique Rejon Aguilar, one of the top leaders of Los Zetas. The weapons used in the ambush were traced to a straw purchaser in Dallas, Texas, who had bought them months earlier and smuggled them into Mexico. Among them was the semi-automatic rifle used to kill Zapata. In the months following the attack, 7 individuals tied to the crime were extradited from Mexico to the U.S. In 2017, 2 of them, Jose Garcia Sota and Jesus Ivan Quezada Pina, were found guilty of murdering a federal law enforcement officer. In the end, they get double life sentences for their roles in the attack. February 2020, a later decision by a federal appeals court in Washington, D.C., overturned part of Sota and Pina's convictions. The court ruled that the section of the law with which they were convicted didn't apply outside of the U.S. Since Zapata was killed in Mexico, his murder couldn't be prosecuted under that statute. Now, the firearms and attempted murder charges were upheld because the law protects foreign officials and international personnel. But this loophole meant that Garcia Sota and Quezada Pina could now face up to 20 years for attempted murder and potentially life for firearms violations, instead of the original double life sentences. The case draws criticism and renews call for law enforcement representatives and lawmakers to close this legal gap that'll leave U.S. federal agents overseas unprotected. Despite Zapata's death, this loophole means his killers may never fully be held accountable.
Okay, she just called someone on the telephone. Let's get the fuck out of here. Shit. Smells like petrol.
Gordon Ramsay, born November 8, 1966, is a world-renowned British chef, TV host, and restaurateur, known for his sharp temper and direct style. In January 2011, Gordon Ramsay traveled to Costa Rica to film a documentary as part of Channel 4's The Big Fish Fight. The segment, titled Shark Bait, aimed to expose the dark world of illegal shark finning, a brutal practice where sharks are caught, their fins sliced off, and they toss them back into the ocean to die. Ramsay, although on professional assignment, was essentially a foreign visitor in a hostile territory, stepping into a region tightly controlled by dangerous criminal networks.
Look, I cannot believe it. There's literally thousands of shark fins drying on the roof.
While filming in Costa Rica, Ramsay and his crew discovered the immense scale of the illegal shark fin trade. The industry is linked to organized crime, particularly the Taiwanese mafia, who dominate the trade in the Pacific region. Shark fins are highly prized in countries like China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, where shark fin soup is considered a luxury dish, selling over for $100 a bowl. Ramsay had hoped to bring global attention to the devastation caused by this trade, but doing so put him and his team directly in harm's way. When they were filming, Ramsay visited this facility heavily guarded by men who acted more like soldiers than fishermen. Now, while his crew was being watched, Ramsay slipped past the guards and climbed onto a rooftop. From there, he saw thousands of shark fins laid out to dry in the open sun, evidence of widespread illegal harvesting. But that discovery came at a cost. When Ramsay returned to ground level, one man poured petrol over his body. Ramsay and his crew narrowly escaped by jumping into their car and speeding away. Still, determined to expose the truth, Ramsay and his team tried again. They managed to talk their way into one of the boats suspected of illegal shark fin trading, and while filming on board, Ramsay dove under the boat and found a hidden sack tied to the keel. When he pulled it out and opened it, he found it was packed with shark fins. But the moment he revealed the contents, the mood of the fishermen on the boat changed. The crew erupted into shouting, and the situation grew tense. Back at the wharf, things escalated further. Armed men showed up and told the whole crew to stand against the wall. Rifles were pointed right at them to prevent any more filming. Shortly after, a van pulls up carrying unidentified men who reinforce the threat. The situation gets so dangerous that local police intervene. After assessing the threat, they give Ramsay and his team a clear warning. If they return to the area, they'd be shot. Despite a crackdown in 2000, Costa Rica remains one of the key global hubs for shark fin trading. The Taiwanese mafia control major ports, and one alone was known to receive 3 shipments of shark fins every week, with global demands driving profits. The trade was estimated to be worth up to $1 billion annually. Ramsay's confrontation with the cartel-backed shark fin industry reveals not just an environmental cost, but the human risk involved in exposing it. However, Ramsay's footage aired. International attention turned to Costa Rica's role in the shark fin trade. Many smugglers were soon arrested, including some linked to larger criminal syndicates. Although the names of the armed men who confronted Ramsay were never made public, the crackdown that followed led to the shutdown of several illegal facilities.
A grim discovery at a scenic site. 3 bodies found in the area where 2 Australians and 1 American were reported missing. Their sons went missing during a surf holiday with their American friend, Jack Carter Road. Mexican authorities say they were killed execution style, all 3 shot in the head.
Jake and Callum Robinson were 2 Australian brothers who had planned nothing more than an adventurous surf trip along the coast of Baja California, Mexico. 30-year-old Jake was a doctor from Victoria, and his 33-year-old brother Callum was a pro lacrosse player living in the U.S. Later, they're joined by their American friend, Jack Carter Road. The group had been drawn to the region's waves, known for attracting surfers from all over the planet. However, the journey would take a deadly turn when they unknowingly crossed paths with members of a violent cartel. April 27, 2024. The 3 friends were last seen in the Santo Tomas area of Ensenada, a location popular among surfers, but also situated in one of Mexico's most dangerous states. Their trip was supposed to continue toward a beachside Airbnb in the resort town of Rosarito. When the men failed to arrive or post any updates online, friends and relatives grew concerned and reported them missing. Local authorities began a search operation. that would soon uncover a disturbing chain of events. Initial investigations showed that the group had set up camp in this remote area not far from the coast. Now, while there, cartel members approached this group intending to steal their white pickup truck. They wanted the tires, actually, which were often stripped and sold. But instead of surrendering their truck, they resisted, and that decision cost them their lives. The attackers respond with deadly force. All 3 tourists are shot in the head and killed on the spot. Their bodies are taken to a nearby property where they're dumped into a 15-foot well, located approximately 6 kilometers from the crime scene.
A grim discovery at a scenic site. 3 bodies found in the area where 2 Australians and 1 American were reported missing.
Authorities later found the abandoned tent of the brothers and their friend, a burnt-out white pickup truck, and a mobile phone belonging to one of the victims. The evidence had confirmed the worst fears of the families who had traveled from Australia and the U.S. to assist in the investigation. Days later, the bodies were positively identified by the victims' relatives. What makes this case horrifying is how brutally it was carried out. And following these murders, law enforcement had launched an extensive investigation. Shortly after, 5 suspects were arrested in connection with these killings. It included Jesus Gerardo Garcia Cota, his brother Christian Alejandro Garcia, and Garcia's 23-year-old girlfriend, Ari Gazelle. Authorities stated that Cota had a prior criminal record and was the primary suspect here. He's charged with forced disappearance, and it's expected that murder charges will be added. The death of the 3 men led to outrage both locally and internationally. Surfers and residents in Ensenada held protests and beach vigils, demanding safer conditions and accountability. In a public show of mourning, local surfers organized a paddle-out ceremony, an ocean tribute traditionally performed for those lost at sea. People carried surfboards bearing messages in support of the victims, including slogans demanding safety and justice. Both Australian and U.S. officials are quick to respond and are joined by the FBI because of a U.S. citizen being involved in the nature of this international crime. June 2024. The brothers are laid to rest in a private service in Sorrento, a suburb of Perth. Friends and loved ones gathered to remember 2 lives filled with purpose and potential. In the months that followed the tragedy, the Robinson family established a foundation in honor of Jake and Callum. Supported by over $520,000 in donations, the foundation's focused on continuing the brothers' legacy through charitable efforts. Their parents, Martin and Deborah Robinson, stated that they were overwhelmed by the global support and intended to use the funds to promote kindness, health, and community values, as these were the principles their sons had lived by. A year after their deaths, a statue was unveiled near the site where the men were killed, serving both as a tribute and a warning of the risks faced by travelers who unknowingly challenged the wrong people in cartel-controlled regions.
Underway after an American couple was shot and killed while on vacation in Mexico.
And Cardona's brother-in-law is also a mayor of the region and told us the bodies were found 7 blocks from his home and that he sees this event as a direct threat.
November 30th, 2024. Raphael Cardona and Gloria were a married couple from Sacramento, California, who had traveled to Mexico to spend the holiday season with family. Now, how could they have known that this would have become a tragedy, as they would cross paths with an unforgiving cartel? The couple, aged 53 and 50 respectively, had 3 children who were not present during the trip. The 2 were well known amongst relatives and visited the municipality of Angamacutiro in Michoacan, where they owned a home. December 11th, 2024. Raphael and Gloria are driving a black 2016 Ford Platinum pickup truck when they're ambushed by armed men near an intersection at the Larazo Cardenas neighborhood in Angamacutiro. The vehicle belonged to Raphael's brother-in-law, Hermes Arnulfo Pacheco Ribisca, the newly elected mayor following the kidnapping and murder of his predecessor in late October. So the gunman opened fire on this vehicle, spraying it with bullets. Gloria dies at the scene. Raphael succumbs to his injuries a short time later in the hospital in Puruandiro. The pickup truck, riddled with bullet holes, was found by responding officers. Ballistic evidence was collected at the scene by state forensic experts. Investigators soon discovered the possible connection to political tensions in the area. So, the fact that Raphael and Gloria were driving Hermes's vehicle at the time of the attack added to the suspicion that the killings may have been a case of mistaken identity, or even a warning to the newly installed official. Investigators began a theory where attackers believed Hermes himself was inside the vehicle. Michoacán has long been a center of cartel activity. The state is Mexico's top avocado-producing region, a market that has seen persistent interference from organized crime groups. And as a result, cartels use these areas to cultivate drugs and establish their criminal networks, while they exert control over local communities. The attack takes place near the couple's home and close to the municipal center. After the attack, the victim's children are placed with an extended family in Angamacutiro, and their adult daughter was contacted by U.S. officials. A mass was held for the couple on December 14th, and all remaining municipal celebrations for the month were canceled in mourning. The double murder shocked the local community and raised questions about safety for foreign visitors in cartel-influenced areas. The U.S. State Department confirms the deaths and stated that consular support had been offered to the family. Mexican federal and state authorities opened a full investigation. However, no arrests have been made.